it's really nice to be here with you guys. Really excited about this conversation with you guys to make sure you're in the right place. Today's culture panel that we're talking about is that everything communicates something. Today's conversation is going to be aligning who you are as a church with who the community thinks you are. So I'll just let you guys introduce yourselves real briefly, your name, your church, and we'll just do that.
All right. My name is Dan McLaughlin, and I'm the executive pastor at First Assembly of God in Niagara Falls. Yay! And I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Mim Jordano. I have a couple roles. I work for North Central Church in Syracuse with their communications, and I also work for the New York District in communications as well.
Bishop Church Unleashed in Long Island, New York.
Great. And if you guys have your phone with you or some sort of texting device, you guys are going to be able to text questions in, probably like you were able to in last session. So I'm going to give you that phone number now for you guys to be able to text that in. So if you guys want to grab your phones out, I will give you that number. It is 315-427-6182. I'll give that to you again. That number is 315-427-6182. So you can feel free to text in any questions that you guys have along the way. And so we're going to spend about the first 45 minutes talking through some different things on this topic. And maybe there'll be some things that you think of that you would like more clarification on or expansion on, or maybe even expansion of direction that we're talking on things that could really help you. And that's what we're here to do, is to serve you guys and to help you out. So if you've got any questions, feel free to text that over. One more time, feels like an infomercial now. The number is 315-427-6182. By today. All right. So wanted to start off today's question for our panelists today, and I'll be participating some as well. But these are the brilliant minds up here. I wanted to start with kind of the broad question of what we're here to talk about, and that is, how do you actually? You know what? Before we begin the questions, I want to have you, Dan, kind of frame this conversation. So we were having a conversation. I thought you had something really valuable to say. Why don't you kind of frame it for us?
Sure. Yeah. So we're talking about communication. Really, we're talking about aligning the community's perception of who you are with who the church actually is. And I know this isn't the centerpiece of our conversation today. It can be very much a bigger conversation, but I think it's important when you're talking about communication is really we have to understand what our identity is before we can communicate what that is. I know that sounds very basic, and understanding that many churches are in different places with this sort of thing. But I know there are many churches that have not fully grasped, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is who we are, this is our identity as a church. And if we really want to connect that identity with what the identity that the church sees us as, or what the community sees us as, then we've got to know what that is in the first place. And so just framing that understanding as we begin this conversation, if you're in a church that has that very well mapped out, then some of the things we're going to talk about today are going to be very practical for you. If you're a church that has not quite grasped or gone through that process to figure out this is who we are, this is our identity, this is what we're about in the community, then that's something a process to go through to discover prior to really setting forth some real large target goals in the area of communication.
That's great. And Mim, if a church or somebody in here is struggling to figure out what is our mission and vision specifically, we know we're called to make disciples of all nations, but specifically, what does that look like for us? Are there ways that you know that they can be helped?
Absolutely. In fact, the New York District wants to help churches who are in that spot. So if you're a pastor of a church and you don't have a clear vision, mission, values, direction, what community you're going to reach out to, we actually have something that we can sponsor you as a church and take you through that program. So if you're interested in that, please contact the New York District office, and we will we will get with you, get you connected with the right people, and move you towards that.
Great. Okay, so let's go with the overarching question. How can you connect and communicate your mission to the people in your community that don't currently come to your church? How do you do that? Maybe how do you currently do that? Or what are some ways you can think of to do that? We'll just bounce it around. We'll start with Todd on the end.
Thank you. Our approach is pretty simple. It's get out there, make a difference in the community, and they'll take notice as to who you are. And I think so often, when we first started our church, we started our church in 2008. When we first started our church, it was get everybody to come to us. And that was our marketing plan. Now our strategy is we're going to go to where you are. And in fact, I think we learned that from the great teacher, Jesus. Wherever he went where people were. He didn't always just attract a crowd. He went to where a crowd could easily be accessible. And so I think for us, it's get into our community. So, a couple things we did was we revamped an entire Boys and Girls Club for our city. We got about 20 citations from politicians, invited to about 4 dinners, just celebrating. Now all of a sudden, people are recognizing what we're doing in our community based on what we're doing for the community. And so often I think what we do is we invite people to our events, when maybe it's about getting to their events and seeing what they're doing, and then they start to hear your heart is not just about you, it's about the city itself. And frankly, I don't know if you'll ever know what they really think of you, because you might, hey, what do you think of our church? Oh, you guys are great. But they still won't give you the variances, they still won't help you out with some of the other stuff. But I think, in essence, it's about just getting there and being with them and communicating your love and the gospel of Christ to people.
A couple of the values at our church is outwardness and authenticity. And I have to give all the credit to the pastors at our church because they're the ones that wanted to reach out to our community by partnering with a local elementary school. And by doing that, I don't know, we were joking around because it's not really a partnership, it's a servantship. Basically, whatever they need, we're out there doing. We have a spring cleanup that we're promoting to our congregation to get out of the 4 walls in our church to actually go out and serve them. And what that is communicating is that we care. So if there's to say that you care is one thing, but to actually show that you care is actually communicates something far bigger. And I think it represents Jesus even more than good graphics, the right font. Actually getting out there and serving with your hands and feet can say a lot more and bring people into the church by doing that. In fact, we've had more people come to the church by not saying anything, just going to them, and which actually said a lot more. So,
I think as in any study of communication, you understand that communication is 2 ways. And so it involves what we're saying, but it also involves listening and finding out what people really think. And I think it's important for us as church leaders to really listen to our community and find ways to figure out what they're thinking and how they view us. Do they even know we exist? That's number 1. But if they do know we exist, then what do they think of us? A couple examples I think of very recently, we had a gentleman come into our church, and he came in and he absolutely loved the church. He was just amazed at how wonderful everyone was and how nice everyone was to him. And he came to us and he said, I've been living across the street from your church for years, and I was afraid to walk in the front door because you were the big church across the street. And he went to 15 other smaller churches prior to coming to ours because he was afraid to walk in our front doors. And we had no idea that our building was actually an intimidation factor for this guy to come across. And so it gave us a different perspective to say we've really got to find a way to be more human to our community, to let people see that we're real people and get out there and do some things to show them that. I think back to the church I worked at in Connecticut as a youth pastor. There was a large portion of the community when that church began to be revitalized that thought because we were a Pentecostal church that we were a cult. And that was a stigma on the church for a little while. And so we began to do things for the community. We began to do this ice cream fest that had all these blow-up things, outreaches, and you guys know how to do outreaches, but it was those types of things that began to give the community a different perception of who we are. And I think when you begin to listen to those things and not just ignore it and say, oh, those people are crazy, to listen to that and have that conversation and understand that if they have a perspective, it comes from, there's a reason there. And what are we doing as a church to placate that or to work and have a different conversation?
Yeah. So for people who are thinking, we have a mission and vision, but we don't always have a perfectly clear communication strategy, how can somebody, and I'll start with you, Mim, how can somebody have a clear, cohesive communication strategy? Where do you start to do that? How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was cool because I came on to both positions at the exact same time, and I started with the same thing with both. And it gave me a good place to know I was in the right direction in one and the wrong direction in another. So one thing I would say is hopefully every church who wants to have a communication strategy starts with us creating a style guide. And what I'll do is I'll put a template online. I actually got from Granger Community Church, and it's a great place to start, because one thing about communications is you want to figure out what you're saying. There's so many different areas you're communicating. It's not just the pastor on the stage. It's your bulletin, your announcements from your stage. You're also communicating with your website if you have one. If you do social media, and then the interpersonal communications, people actually talking to each other, which we need to ramp up a little more in this day and age. But to start with the style guide, it'll help you figure out where you're lacking as far as cohesiveness. If you've got, different fonts all over the place, different logos all over the place, that's just one thing. You're communicating whether or not you've got it together, but also to be cohesive in that, everybody's on the same page. You want to get everybody on the same page for sure. And, I would definitely say one of my values is simplicity, just to simplify. We're in the information age, and in this day and age, you are bombarded constantly by information. So in your communication strategy, I would say, where can you simplify? What can you cut out? Because when you have too much, it's conflicting. And when there's confliction, you get people who either just walk away or become paralyzed when they see something. And so they don't make decisions. So the less, the better. Fewer announcements, fewer items in the bulletin, and stuff like that. But I would start with style guide.
How many announcements should a church make on a Sunday morning? Zero announcements.
Zero.
Okay, talk about that.
We don't like to make announcements in our church on Sundays. We think we do that's about encountering Jesus. And I think it becomes so programmed, we see a lot of churches, 10 to 15 minutes on announcements. Well, that's 10 to 15 minutes we can be in the presence of God and worship, listening to God's word. People don't come there they don't want the infomercials. They want their lives to be changed by the presence and person of Jesus Christ. So we try and keep ours to a minimum. We kind of deviated from that a little bit, but our goal is 0 announcements every week. Because when people come, now we do pre-service announcements, so 5 minutes before the service, there'll be a roll of announcements that'll be rolling out. Because we want people to come, they're going to hear Jesus. And they're going to grow in their faith. And it's, so I think you can over-communicate your stuff.
Which ends up not communicating anything.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us do that. We're so busy. This is going to be the best thing of your week. And they're like, yeah, we don't believe it because you said that about the last thing you went to. And it stunk. It stunk. What you told us to sorry. And so we kind of just throw that out there. And it's the best. And they already went to the thing that tanked. So we're better off just kind of putting it out there. Here's our infomercials before the service. So that when it comes to our start time, we're rolling right into worship. We're celebrating Jesus. We're taking the offering, the worship expression of giving, and we're rolling into it. I just think we waste a lot of people's time. And that's why they disconnect in the middle of service.
I think it's great to be about one thing, too. Like if you have a month where you're promoting missions, What if you got upstage and you're like, oh, you got the women's thing you can be a part of, and you got the missions you can support, oh, and you can also give to this other area.
And
Oh,
if
wait.
you don't mention one person,
And they get offended.
so we don't mention anybody. We offend everyone. We're an equal opportunity offender, man.
I'd say, no, it's true, but you gotta, some people get offended and they're like, hey, you didn't say this, you didn't say this. And a lot of times we say what they want us to say because we don't want to create discourse. But why punish the whole congregation just to make one person happy?
So let me ask for clarification on that. So what if your youth ministry is having a huge event or a big outreach, or there's this big outreach that your church is doing, or this big event, whatever it looks like. How then do you let your church know about that if you're saying 0 to very few announcements? How are you then able to get people to show up to anything? How are you able to effectively communicate that to besides Sunday morning gatherings, when you've got the majority of your biggest gathering, I'm assuming, of people? How do you move people towards other things that you're doing, or are you just focused Sunday mornings? What does that look like for you guys?
I'll answer that. This has been a big struggle for us with our leaders. We're really trying to reshape them into thinking in a new way. But it's been, some of them are really grabbing hold of it now, and it's working well. But we believe that the leaders should own the success of their events. And so there's been a long-standing tradition in our church that an event does not succeed if the pastors don't talk about it from the pulpit. And then it puts all the onus on the ministers or the pastors who have the mic to make their event work. And if their event didn't work, then I didn't make the announcement good enough. And so we said that, look, we're only going to, so we don't do no announcements, and we break it a little bit. I really would love to do none. We only do announcements that affect everybody in the church. So if it's an announcement that affects everyone in the church, then we'll mention it briefly. But for the most part, our leaders have to sell their events themselves. So we tell them, look, pass out a flyer when people are leaving. Go meet everybody individually for the 15 minutes before service and the 15 minutes after. Make phone calls, do emails, use social media. We'll put anything you want on our Facebook page. We'll use all of those other things as an avenue to help them promote their events, and we'll support them in doing that. But we will not take away from the Sunday morning service. We don't want to do that because it just becomes too cluttered of a message. And the biggest challenge is, well, it's easy to say no there. The biggest challenge is training them to rethink that way. And you really find out who is an actual leader in your church then, and who is just a figurehead of the ministry.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, it's something we call direct communication. So, and one thing that we have a guideline as far as what does get said from the pulpit. If it doesn't communicate to all one gender or the whole congregation, it doesn't get announced from stage. So, and that's just a guideline, and everything else gets filtered through. Like for the youth, the youth is going to be directly communicated to the youth, and to the parents and the youth through a different medium. So you got to find the medium that works for your church community.
Yeah, and I think that pointed information is so much more helpful, because now if it's the youth leader who's talking to the youth, here is our big thing coming up this month. It's not, here's the youth thing, here's the kids thing, here's the family thing, here's the 10 things, and then when you're watching the video reel or the people come up and talk about it, now you're disengaged. So many people are disengaging for so much of the time, and basically what Todd said is we're essentially wasting very valuable time because we've only got this set amount of time with these people. Let's make sure we're maximizing that. I think that's what everybody's here is trying to think, how can I maximize both my services and my communication? I think that's really, really good, guys. And I think too, part of it is even developing systems that can really make sure that you're not having anybody fall through the cracks. So I think like within every sub-ministry within your church, make sure that there's some clear way that you're getting their contact information. And maybe you just need their name and email, and it's just real simple. So it's a real easy step for them. Or maybe you want their home address and their phone number, so you could text them and those kinds of things. But either way, I feel like you want to make sure you're getting that information in every one of your, especially your primary ministries of kids and youth, and maybe men's, women's, that kind of a thing, or new visitors, and to really make sure you're getting that.
While we're on the subject, one of the other things that we've done internally is that, this made some people mad, but I'm okay with it, is that we've gotten rid of our bulletin. And I know that sounds crazy, but... Heresy. But people were using the bulletin to recruit people for their ministry. So their avenue of recruiting help for their ministry was to put an ad in the bulletin. And then they'd come to us and say, Pastor, nobody wants to be a part of my ministry. It's failing. And so we simply took that option away from them completely and said, no, look, if you're going to grow your ministry, you've got to go out and meet people, and you've got to invite people into your ministry. And so we've replaced the bulletin with a calendar. It's a calendar of events, and that's it. But they're not allowed to recruit anybody on that calendar of events. But anything they want on the calendar, but if they're going to recruit people, it's not going to be from the pulpit, and it's not going to be in print. It's got to be in person.
How Dan, has that affected your ministry leaders? Has that, because maybe for people they're thinking, if we got away from the bulletin, or we got away from making announcements, we would really see involvement head in the negative direction. What has that been like for your guys' experience? Because it sounds like you guys have been in churches that have used bulletins, and now you guys are moving away from that, either bulletins or morning announcements. What has that been like for you guys in that experience?
I think there's been no significant decline, obviously, in any ministry. I think the leaders that have absorbed it have grown and have done better, and the leaders that haven't absorbed it have complained and really been either the same or heading in the same direction they would have been. So for us, again, the same as with the announcements from the pulpit, it's a matter of retraining the leaders. And again, you find out who is really a leader when you begin to make those definitions and not give them those crutches to stand on. Because we want people to build relationships. We want people to personally invite people into their lives, not us invite people onto their team so they don't have a personal relationship with a leader. And so it's about a culture change. And some accept it, some don't. But the ones that do, we're seeing phenomenal results of that. That's really awesome.
We haven't done a bulletin in
2 years.
I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Our church has tripled in 2 or 3 years. Our volunteer base is almost quadrupled. And we're not using any of the avenues most of us use to recruit, because you recruit via relationship. So if I'm building a relationship with Matt, and Matt's now recruiting someone else, so our whole thing is you've got to reproduce yourself. So every leader, every person has to reproduce themselves in somebody else. And so when you reproduce this, you don't need a marketing plan. You've got people. And when you utilize the greatest resource in your church, which is free, it's called people, they will recruit for you. They will grab somebody and say, man, Greg, I want to invite you to this men's breakfast. This is the best thing happening. You don't want to miss this. I don't have to say anything from the pulpit or put it. We got rid of, we didn't pray about the bulletins. We just felt like it was wasting time for paying people to come in and stuff in full bulletins, when we could be ministering to people, praying with people, and doing things that really matter versus stuff pushing paper. And so to us, it was a spiritual thing. It was like, we're occupying people's times and wasting God's resource on a sheet of paper that, let's be honest, I don't know if you find it the same way I did, but you'll find 70% of them still left in the seats, crumpled in a corner, or some kid putting his snot in there and leaving it in the back of the seat. Like, I mean, honestly, it literally was like poor stewardship for us. That's why we looked at it. So we're not going to waste people's time and God's money.
So for you, Todd, how are you communicating the calendar of events for you guys and what's upcoming? What does that look like for you guys? Is that just through your website?
And I'll say welcome to Church Unleashed. We're so glad to have you here. My name is Todd Bishop, lead pastor of this wonderful church. We're glad if you're a guest today, if you fill out that connection card, that allows us to get information from you so we can in turn give information to you. If you're looking for any information on upcoming events, visit mychurchunleashed.tv. It'll get you plugged into what God's doing here. That's it.
Verbatim.
Like, that's memorized every single week. Matt does it at our other campus. I do it at our Hicksville, and our Spanish pastor does our Spanish. It's the same exact verbiage matters. And cross ministries, cross campuses, if you're multi-site, The language has to be the same. That's why I like what you said. Language matters. If your youth pastor is communicating differently than you are, it's miscommunication. The language has to be the same across campuses, ministries, individuals. And if did I say gonna come on?
Yeah, you can.
Wow, who was that? Yeah, come on.
So what I hear you saying is that
You reflective listening. Right?
I know.
It's my marriage therapy class.
Counseling for time.
Is that maybe the leaders should be talking to each other too?
Yeah,
Do you think maybe that's a plan?
Yeah, we actually have a, what is it now, once a quarter, we have our leaders meeting where we go over all calendar stuff and put the responsibility on them to promote their ministries, their programs, their initiatives, their fundraising, all that stuff. It's on them to do it. And I like what Dan said, is that we basically take a responsibility and they feel guilty and they're like, Pastor didn't announce my women's breakfast. I'm not going. I'm not going to announce it. So it's like literally, and it takes a little bit to get the culture to shift, but shift happens.
Now, how have you guys handled that pushback from maybe ministry leaders or from other people in your church who really want there to be a bulletin, you want that announcement? Is it you need to create the framework of, hey, we only announce things that apply to all people? What if it's something that applies to all people, but you don't think it's going to be what's best? How do you handle that conversation with people who are really trying to push what they want and being able to say no, but do that graciously? How do you do that?
I personally, and I think it's a development thing. I think you've got to retrain people on how to lead and how to run their ministry. So when I have somebody that says to me, well, I normally would have put that in the bulletin, or I normally would have had you announce that, I begin to give them every resource possible for them to do it in another way. And I'll say, if you don't know how to do this, I'll sit down with you and I'll show you how to do this. If you don't know how to do this, I'll sit down and I'll show you how to do this. And I take them through 10 other ways for them to accomplish that same thing. But I put it on them. It's still their job, but it's my job still to train them. So it's easy for me to say no, but I still have to be available to help train. And our job is to develop people. But when we do that, we're helping to set them up for success in the future and to do it on their own in the future and have it not constantly come back to leadership.
And I'll say this too, I don't really say no to anybody anymore. That's why you hire staff. Pastor can't look like the bad guy because then they don't receive your word on a Sunday. And so we have Gina, our Director of Operations, she's our volunteer manager. She handles all volunteers, so she's responsible for discipling them, make sure they know what they're doing, spiritual development, ministry development. She's doing all that stuff. So as far as any systems, I don't know what they are anymore. I know she does it. And that's a good feeling, actually.
So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. Give me 1 to 2 creative ways that you use communications to engage with your community. Maybe it can be a story, or maybe it can be here's the mediums we're using, but give me some creative ways, practical ways to be able to engage the community outside of your church. What do you do?
She did. You guys did.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll just give you a couple of practical examples. I think when it comes to your face to the community, mostly through your website and through your social media, the external things you have out there that people can look into before they walk into the building, people look at that stuff more so now than ever because there's an intimidation factor when they're walking into your church. And so they want to know as much as they can before they walk in the door so they're not surprised. And so one of the things we've done is we live stream our services. It's not perfect. It's not the greatest in the world. It's not. If you went and looked at it right now, I would not necessarily be proud of the quality. But it takes away that fear of them not knowing what it's going to look like. And so we do it. It's for very little equipment, and we use it free service through YouTube and Google, and we stream our services every Sunday, and it allows people. We get 50 views a week on that, and people can go and see what our services look like ahead of time. And whether your church has the capacity to do that, or even just record your services and put them on afterwards, that makes a huge difference because it takes away that anxiety of them not knowing what the church is going to be like before they come in. Another practical thing that we use is Facebook advertising. So a lot of people use Facebook organically, which is awesome because it's free. But we also use Facebook advertising, and for $100, I can reach 20,000 people in my zip code on the exact thing that I want to promote to the community. So we did an Easter egg hunt at the church, and I put out a form, a registration form they could pay online. I put the link on Facebook, and I paid $100 to reach the people in 14034. Right? And whatever it was. 14304. Anyway, we had 200 pre-registrants come in from our community from me spending $100. Now, I think any of us would pay 50 cents for somebody to walk in the doors of our church one time. So the value for that advertising-wise is huge. I was telling Mim earlier today, first church I worked at, walked in 2003, they were spending $5,000 a year on a phone book advertisement because it worked. Now, that's what worked in 2003. And today we have so many opportunities to use internet advertising at such a low cost, and it's so targeted. You can pick your demographic, you can pick your age group, you can pick, if it's a parent, if it's a teenager, if they're interested in fishing, if they're interested in sports, you can narrow all of that down and use that specifically for your purposes. So that's been one of the most practical tools I've used, and highly recommend it.
I'll just say this, we tried everything in the beginning, mass mailing, Facebook, mass texting, you can buy the text list. And the thing that's worked for us is TV commercials. It has been the greatest thing, and most churches get intimidated by that because they think it's so overly expensive. But when you advertise on your local cable networks, it's really not that expensive. And most churches, most budgets can actually handle that. So we'll run, what do we do? A third. What we do, we break the year into thirds, and then we advertise 3 times a year, some kind of giveaway, something that we do. And literally last year, I think we had, I want to say like 1,500 visitors walk into our church. And we keep about 30% every year. So we're growing with that TV commercial. And so we've kind of leveraged that as kind of our media apparatus. We don't put any money anywhere else. It's all TV commercial. So our entire marketing budget goes into TV commercials. And then we do the practical stuff. We get involved in the Chamber of Commerce. We co-sponsor events that they're doing. We want to make sure that we're making sure, it says in Jeremiah, somewhere in the Bible, it says, work for the good of the city. If our city prospers, we too will prosper. And I think our theology problem is we want to prosper before we prosper our city. But the scripture says, if I bless my city, prosper my city, then the city will bless me. That's why the marketing outreach has to always be, how can I bless, love, encourage, grow my city? Because eventually they're going to come back to you and say, Pastor, we need you. Or when you go to a Chamber of Commerce dinner and they say, Pastor, will you do the invocation? But you can't say Jesus. And you're like, I can do that in his name. Amen. Try it on.
I don't know how to follow up to that.
I have my B12 today, so I'm amped up ready to go.
One of the things we're working on right now is formatting our website so that it communicates with a new person, the one that, because most people come to the church by first searching us out through our website. So if we've got the website geared for the person who's already a member of our church, then it kind of defeats the purpose. So we've changed everything on our homepage to reach out to the first-time guest. So what are they looking for? One of the biggest hits is, our pastor, what is he saying? What is his preaching? They want to see his messages. They also want to see what a Sunday service might be like. How do they dress? That kind of thing. What does this church believe? Or, some people might think, well, are they cool? I don't know. So I try to figure that out. But one thing we're going to start doing also is using video and telling people stories, because I think that's the thing that will communicate the most. For instance, if you're, once a year you try to get a bunch of volunteers, there's a big difference between going on stage and saying, hey, we've got 50 areas, you can volunteer, come on in, versus having a video or telling someone's story of how they first got into children's ministry and they weren't too sure about it, but it changed their life. And then, and actually this is a story that a church told, and it showed that their numbers of volunteers skyrocketed because they told someone's story of their volunteering and how Jesus changed their life through serving someone. And so that's definitely one thing we're going to start investing in is creating videos for each area. What is it like to walk in our doors for the first time? What is it like to serve at our church? What are the stories that we can tell?
Yeah, at our church, we had actually made a few announcements of, hey, we need some more kids ministry workers, which is every church in America. And we had said, try to do some creative things. And one of the things that we did was we made a kids Sunday where the kids led worship and the kids passed out communion. And maybe that's too, scary or something for you guys. But we did it, and it was really successful. And one of the things that our children's director did was made a video of kids telling how grateful they were to their teachers. It was just very, very moving the way it was all framed. And we saw our largest influx of volunteers of any time in our church's history when we simply told stories that simply said thank you to our people currently serving. It actually drew in a whole lot more people. Because that's a casting of vision of why somebody would sign up for children's ministry. But it's not just casting vision, it's telling a story of life change that I think can be really helpful. Now, you guys were talking about websites. One of the questions that was texted in, which I want to give you guys that number one more time in case you would like to text that in. That number might show up on my phone here. All right, here it is. 315-427-6182. But the question I wanted to ask you guys was, what are the 3 to 5 or maybe one thing that you need on your homepage that you need to make sure is there? Because I read something 4 years ago from a market research of a church, I think it was, I don't remember who did it, who conducted it, but they said 96% of visitors will check out your website before they walk through your doors. That was 4 years ago. We only know it's getting more that way, and we'll continue in that direction. So what are the things you have to have on your homepage? And secondly, what are the things that have to be cut from that homepage? Because that's probably the harder question. I'd like to hear your guys' response to that.
First of all, I think it's important to understand that the website is for the visitor. If you look at a website, as your church website, as for your church members, you'll be very disappointed when you begin to develop it. So if you look at it as 98%, this is for church visitors, then you're going to get it right. And so you've got to come with it from that perspective. And so we don't have all these confusing things that make it an insider's game in the front of it. It has to be clearly for first-time guests, their first impression of the church. You need to have the service times and the address on the homepage. If people have to search for more than 10 seconds to find that, they will click and go to another page. It is unbelievable to me how long it takes some pages to load. So it needs to load fast, and it needs to have that very simple information. It should be easy to navigate. So we've got, I think, 5 tabs at the top of ours. There's no drop downs. Where you click and there's like 8 drop downs. Another 8 drop downs, 16 drop downs. No drop downs. I have 5 tabs. It's extremely simple to keep people focused on what matters most. And so what people care about most is, obviously the basics, where the church is, what time it is, but who are the staff? You need to have pictures of your staff on your site. They want to know what they look like, pictures of your ministry leaders, so they can know who their kids are going to be taken away with. And then if you can have your sermons on there, that really helps as well. So.
I had to look. It's like 5 pictures of me. It really is. I am a little narcissistic, I think. I think the pastor is the pivotal part of the church. This is something I had to get used to as a pastor, that as good as the worship is, you can't transfer DNA through worship. You transfer it through preaching and teaching. And people want to connect with the pastor. And so I think it's putting yourself out there, and that's uncomfortable for most of us, to be honest, because we don't want to be out there. as far as that kind of self-promoting. But they're coming to hear you, and they're going to hear you speak for 45 minutes. So we have a picture of me and my beautiful bride. She makes the picture worth looking at. And then we have basically media on the first one. We have media, our story, our vision, our beliefs, and media. That's it. That's our homepage. Everything else you got to get to. You got to hit locations or whatever. And the bigger your church gets, the more complicated your website gets, typically. So simplify it. Keep the website simple, because I don't think most people would use the website. In fact, I was looking at our Google Analytics a couple weeks ago, and literally most of our guests hit 2 pages. That's it. 2 pages.
What are they?
Home, about the pastor. That's the 2 pages they hit. Why is that? Because they know the pastor's who's going to teach me, a guest. The pastor's going to help me grow. The pastor is my connection to God. That's how they see it. And we can fight against that, or we can embrace the flow and direct people, say, hey, we're going to use that, kind of that mentality, and we're going to redirect you that it's not just the pastor. There is a lead pastor in the church, and his name is Jesus, and we want to direct you to him. So it's uncomfortable for a lot of us. I think probably most of us, I had to get used to it.
Yeah, I would say too, I've read things that say the number one determining factor for how somebody chooses a church is the lead pastor. And so I think you're spot on with that, Todd, but here's my question that maybe people are wrestling with this tension. How do I promote and be excited without it feeling self-promotional and like I'm into myself? Or I'm something great, whereas we're all trying to communicate how great God is. How do you guys navigate that tension? And maybe Todd, especially you as a lead pastor, how do you navigate that of promoting yourself because you want people to come, you want them to hear about Jesus, but at the same time feeling like I don't want this to be about me? How do you wrestle with that, or where are you at with that? Anybody can answer though.
I'm working on that, to be honest. Because I think ministry is very much for adrenaline junkies sometimes. It's great to say 50 people gave their lives to the Lord on Easter, but we can have 100. And I think, so I wrestle with that, to be honest. I think it's a great question. And I think that what humbles me is what happens the next week when you have a cruddy attendance, or you don't see the follow-up, or the decisions made, or you go home to, I'm married to a Puerto Rican girl from Queens. She can tell me what for. And she'll say, your message is terrible today. That's pretty humbling. And so she has a way to humble me. And then, we allow our staff to be pretty honest and pretty transparent. Dad's here to tell you. We know it's about the kingdom, and we can either get in the way of it, or we can be a channel to it. And so I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I think, I don't know. I wish I knew the answer.
Do you think that the lead pastor should be the primary person driving the communications, specifically online? Maybe like Facebook or these sorts of things, from posting the stuff to maybe being the main person in the videos or on the pictures. What do you guys think? Should that be is that the face of the organization? So should they be the feature?
Only if the pastor is able to do that. Not everyone has that gifting or that know-how. I was gifting. I don't know. Sounds dumb.
Good looks.
Not good looks, but some people are very Twitter savvy and Facebook savvy, and they're able to reach a lot of people. A lot of people follow them, a lot of pastors and stuff. But some don't. But maybe their associate pastor has that type of following, or maybe they have a congregation that isn't on Twitter, it isn't on Facebook. So there's going to be that's going to be different for every church.
Great. All right.
Yes,
go right ahead.
You should not have your events on your homepage and your calendar. That is not for the outsider. That is only internal. So take them out.
Anything else that should be cut from the main screen, the main homepage? We got multiple. We gotta get the amen before we're done. Anything else that you guys think should be cut from the home screen? And I guess one of the things you guys have really pushed for is, we're not doing announcements, we're not doing bulletins. Our members go to our website, but now what I'm hearing you say is the website is for visitors.
Well, understand that there's still going to be a calendar spot on that where people can still see what's happening at the church. And if each ministry is doing right, they're going to have publications, they're going to have material, they're going to be able to have that to be able to distribute to kids. Hey, give this to your mom and dad when they come home, when they check in or check out from childhood services. It's a challenge, but what else can you cut? I don't know. I think, what should you have? That's probably, you shouldn't have some of the stuff that's just all about us. It's got to be, get to the church, check us out on a Sunday. That's what you really need on that homepage so that they can get into the door. Because I think most churches, and most of our churches, are probably great churches, do a great service, but we're like a billboard in the wilderness. Nobody knows we're there. And so we got to put that billboard up wherever we can so that people know the great quality that we have in Assembly of God churches. It's interesting that the whole Pew Research study that came out, evangelical Protestant Pentecostal churches are growing at rates larger, and we kind of shy away from our Pentecostal distinctive. So I think in some ways we can have all the marketing in the world, but if we don't have the move of God's presence in a church, I don't give a rip how big the church is. If God's not moving, lives are not being changed, people's hearts aren't being stirred, people aren't being pulled into ministry, or their lives aren't being radically turned around. I think that's kind of the conflict I'm in sometimes, because I do think marketing a lot like Mim. And it's like, you can market the move of God out of your church. Because you just do all the right things, say all the right things, no, this is our language, this is our branding. When we have a larger brand, it's the Church of Jesus Christ, not of the Latter-day Saints, but the Church of Jesus Christ, that we are a part of, and that brand matters more. And so we've got to make sure, it's totally off on a tangent, I'm ADHD, but it's like if our brand conflicts with his brand, we got to change our brand, not him. And I think so often we try and change the brand of God versus our own and try and get him to fit us when we're supposed to fit his agenda, his plan. So I don't know, I'm Pentecostal through and through. In fact, when I first started church, we kind of hit our Pentecostal distinctive. Now we get a little more, we're laying hands on people. I think people, when they come to church, if you can market them in, you motivate them to stay. You market them in, you motivate them to stay. They come in, they get a good product. Their heart is broken, their marriage is falling apart, their kids are sick, there are a lot of special needs families are. They come in, they don't want advertisements. They need the presence of God to refresh them and fill them. So you use marketing to get them in, but if you have used marketing, you have to keep marketing, you have to use marketing to keep them in. You can't market beyond ESPN or HBO or any of those. You've got to have the motivation of God's presence to keep them in. And so marketing is only the hook.
It's not a good sign if you've got a lot of people coming into your doors and going out at the same rate. So
That's great. That's all great stuff. Now, how do you guys manage your different ministry leaders? If they come to you and they want to promote, so let's say the youth leader wants to promote this, the women's wants to promote this, how much hands-on are you guys involved in kind of, what could be looked at as micromanaging that, or could be looked at as making sure it's staying in alignment with mission vision? How do you guys manage that from the sub-ministries within your church to make sure they're communicating clearly and on point, and it's not getting, you've said too cluttered, less is more is what Mim said. And so how do you manage that? Because you can manage yourself and what you're saying. How do you manage the other people in your church on that?
I know at our church we have one person that people have to go to. And he just basically has the authority to say, no, this doesn't line up with our vision, it doesn't line up with our values, or it does, or, we're not going to announce it from stage, but here's what we can do for you. I think that's important. You don't necessarily have to say no, cut you out of the pass, you can't do anything. You say, but this is what we can do, and I think that's important. So having one person who does have a say, I think is important. It doesn't have to be the pastor.
Right. Let's get even more practical. What percentage of your budget do you believe should be going towards communications? Or maybe it's just for you it's a number. Our budget is, $200,000 and we put $20,000 towards that. And sometimes maybe that's a harder question to answer, but maybe even just on advertising, what kind of money are your churches putting towards that?
We're at 15 to 20% of our annual budget.
Do you guys know?
I would say it's not nearly that much. We try to use a lot of the free avenues that are out there. And so we invest in our website, we invest in some social media advertising, and we try to use as many free avenues as we can. So it can be done on a low budget. That's I think the takeaway is there's a lot of different ways to do it, and the age we live in is awesome to be able to use some of those resources. So I think we may spend $1,000, $2,000 a year.
All right, we're getting right towards the end of our session. Thanks everybody for hanging with us and for being a part of this conversation. I've loved a lot of the things you guys have texted in. For you guys, how, when, and where do your sub-ministries practically promote their ministries? What are the places, what are the avenues? How, when, and where?
Okay, so what we do is I have a form, an online form that each of them fill out, and then I try to have a hard copy form for the few of them that refuse to use the internet, which is amazing that we have leaders that are that way, but it's still true. So I have one form that they fill out, that form comes to me, and then I just, I can distribute it from there.
To your team?
To my team or whoever it needs to go to. Like Mim said, there needs to be a point person that can filter all that data and then rewrite it if it's grammatically incorrect, if it's all over the place. You've got to be able to filter that stuff. And then from there we filter it to our church calendar, our public calendar on the web, the social media opportunities. We give them the opportunity to do all of that so they can select which things they'd like to use, which avenues they'd like to use, and help them do that.
And if somebody wanted to see what you're using for that, where would they go? The First Niagara website?
To see what we're using for
that form. Like, what does that form look like so they can...
It's not on their website, but I just have a link that I send to my leaders. But we use, right now we use it as part of a program called Church Community Builder. Some of you are familiar with that. It's a church management software. But what's great now is even if you're using, that's an expensive program to use, and not every church can afford that, I understand that. But Google Forms now is awesome. So you can create surveys on those things. You can create all your forms and payments, all that stuff on Google Forms for free. So that's another, again, there's a lot of cheap ways to do the exact same thing. CCB or Church Community Builder does like 37 things at once, and that's why we use it. But that's one of the features that we use for that.
I'll just tag off of him. Another practical website to look at is Planning Center Online. Maybe you use it for your musicians and things already, but they're rolling out a lot of ways to be able to manage everything, kind of like Church Community Builder, but at a much, much less cost to you. So they're even going to be rolling out giving through Planning Center here before the end of the year. So I'll definitely be checking out Planning Center Online if you don't have a current solution and you're looking for one. That could be a real good one. Okay, here's our last question, and here's what I got for you guys. Do you think that having such a vast amount of programs and ministries and events can itself communicate something opposite than the mission, vision, and core values of the church? Why or why not?
Yes.
Everybody says yes. Why?
Well, the main message that we want to communicate is God's redemption and Jesus Christ, right? If we have too many things that we're throwing out there, it takes away from that message and it creates confusion. And when someone is presented with too many choices, they either freeze up, they either ignore it, or totally disengage. And so, I don't know about you, but I think that means that we lose if we put too much out there. If we communicate everything, and we communicate nothing, we get no positive or productive feedback. And if we want to advance our message, if we want to get out that we're about Jesus Christ, we're about having a personal relationship with Him, well, the main thing that we need to communicate is that, we have a personal relationship with Him too, and that we have a relationship with each other. So setting an example, but simplifying, beat everything in your church with a simple stick. And, just kind of weed it down to what the main things, because you can always add things back, but it would be probably good to take down bulletin boards and brochures all over the place. And because, when someone walks in your door, well, it's called this experience design. So the moment someone hears about your church or looks you up on the website, checks out your Facebook, to the moment they sit in your parking lot, walk in your doors, sit in your sanctuary, listen to your message, walk out your doors, what are they hearing? So it's not so much about what you say, it's about what they hear. And if what you're saying is not, if they're not responding in the way that you would like them to respond, then you're saying the wrong thing.
How do I say this? We are masters at reproducing what somebody else did without God's anointing for that on us. That we try to do, well, this church is doing that, so I got to do that. And I think one of the things I value about our church is we just said we're not introducing anything until we know it's good to us and the Holy Spirit. Not just good to us, not good to somebody. So we're original, and so I think all of us are. So I think if we're all original and God created us all originally, then even our churches should be original. And so I would just like to say, I just think, especially if you're a church planner, please don't feel like you have to have Royal Rangers and Missionettes on day one. Like, get people in the church first. Then add those ministries if and when, more if and when, or when and if. You have to, or need to, or we don't have them. But, it's like, it depends on what your culture needs. And so I think sometimes what we do is say, well, Dan did this, that's got to work. Mim did this, it's got to work. Have you consulted God? Marketing is actually really spiritual. Jesus started the marketing campaign. Go into all the world. Preach the gospel. In other words, market the master. And yet we don't have it's sinful to market. I can't believe we spend this kind of money on marketing. Jesus gave us life for the mission. That's a lot more value than our dollars and cents. And so I think our hope has to be I don't want to have a lot, but I also don't want to have not enough. I want to have just what God has for me for the season we're in right now. And so if you're a church 5 years or younger, you don't have to have everything in a church 25 years. We're toddlers. And so I think sometimes we try and get ourselves ahead because we have this comparative mentality that I got to compare. When you compare, you despair. And so when you look at somebody else, the church is not meant to compete with each other. We're meant to complete each other. And so we recognize we all have our own roles and our own affinities and our own calling. Walk in your calling. Walk in the anointing God gave you, because God didn't call all of us to be Steve Furtick. God didn't call all of us to be Joe Osteen or any of us. God called you to be you. Be the best you can be. However you market that, God's going to use it. You're following the Master's mission. Go into all the world. Preach the gospel. Use every modus operandi you can to convey the gospel, whether it's print material, whether it's television, whether it's internet-based, whatever it is, preach the gospel. And if you're preaching the gospel, you're going to have fruit. That's the greatest marketing you do, is preach Jesus. And if you preach Jesus, people are going to keep coming back because their hearts are going to be healed, their lives are going to be restored. That's the best marketing you can do. If all our marketing is just marketing, and it's not presenting Christ, we're just throwing money away because they're coming to a show. We want them to come and see Jesus on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever services. So I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate that. And one of the takeaways, even for me, that's interesting is some of you guys are coming from some larger churches in the section, and a lot of what you have said is there needs to be a lot more tapping on the shoulder from your ministry leaders, when we talked about at the beginning, and less upfront announcements, less bulletin, more personal contact. which is really interesting in the social media connected age that we live in. That makes sense that would cut through. So I just wanted to allow you guys to say thank you to our panelists for a great conversation. And we really appreciate you guys being a part of this. Maybe there's some specific questions that you have that didn't get answered, or you feel like some of these guys or girl could help give some insight on. We're going to be available for some specific questions and answers right now. So thank you guys so much for your time and for being a part of this, and have a blessed rest of your day.
Give it up for Jonathan, doing a great job.
Thanks again, guys.